at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. Thank you very much for being a part and parcel of this broadcast this morning. This is your economic review where we get to tell you the biggest headlines that you are waking up to this morning. We are joined by Reginald Kazitsu and Peter Amunga this morning to take us through the next few headlines. Now, dwindling university students' admissions coupled with reduced higher education budget allocation are pushing public universities to the brink of collapse in the country after the Auditor General revealed that Kenyatta University has dipped into a 1.3 billion deficit in the year to June, which has forced the university to rely on short-term loans to finance its operations. The deficit has continued to grow, going by the Auditor General's books, which put it at 677 million in the year to June 2019, with the office stating that Kenyatta University's reliance on costly short-term loans was making its liquidity problem worse. Some public universities in the country, like the University of Nairobi and Moi University, have been forced to scrap off some courses and close some satellite campuses in a bid to bring down the cost of running the institutions. Let's jump into that data this morning before we cross over to Reginald this morning. And we can see under the university enrollment, it has continued to fall all the way to just 509,473 in the year ended at 2019 at 2020, sort of confirming what universities in the country are afraid of, that dwindling number of enrollment. Now let's look at expenditure. That is the state expenditure for university education in the country, and you can see recurrent expenditure is the one that marks the bulk of that spending. But if you look at development expenditure as well, sort of holding cold, because that's where the budget cuts have come in throughout the entire of that period. Now, that said, today also marks the deadline for university placement in the country. We do expect also that statement from the Ministry of Education this morning on exactly how that exercise has fared on. Reginald, let me cross you this morning. If you look at that situation now, we do have Nairobi University that more than tripled the tuition fee for self-sponsored students in their campus. Some of them are paying upwards of 3 million for a full year course, and also them spearheading this proposal to have the fee or the tuition for public sponsored students rise from 16,000 to 48,000. That is triple what they're paying right now, and also forced to scrap off some offices, scrap off some courses, and also close some satellite campuses across the country. When you look at that situation, let's look at Kenyatta University itself as well. If you look at that deficit they're running under, if you go back to 2019, it was 677 million. Now, 1.3 billion. I mean, when you look at that situation, Reginald, what does it point toward?
I think the first thing that it points towards is a question that we need to answer, whether it's Kenyatta University or our parastatals. It is a public university. Did the government set it up to make a profit or provide quality education?
Yes.
Is number one thing that needs to be determined, maybe not by us, but at government level. So that if it is to provide quality education and not take a profit, then the government should fund, and this becomes a non-issue. But if they are designed to make a profit, then the university needs to sit down and say, how do we generate revenue apart from school fees alone?
Yes.
As in different sources of revenue. So if you look at globally, look at the big universities, your Harvards, your Stanfords, and all these other universities that are there that we name off head. Majority of their funding comes from donor or research grants from places like World Bank, rich people and stuff like that. So you'll find departments, so for example, if you're taking KU, if they've maybe, let's say, a medical department, It's the responsibility of that medical department to make sure that they have enough grants coming in to fund the department, fund the research that goes on and moving forward. If you look at what comes from the government in terms of being a public university, the amount that goes for research, for education is very little. If you go to the budget and look at the allocation that goes to universities, most of it is actually to recurrent. And if an university is not known for its ability to research, therefore not be able to produce very good quality graduates or research ideas, then it becomes very hard to attract funding. So as universities, instead of tripling, quadrupling, and slashing fees, what they should be then doing is, how do we go and attract research funding and do it department-wise? So if then that is the idea or the direction for them to go, then we come back. If you look at Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the number of skill sets or the graduates that we are coming out with. In 21st century, we cannot be still graduating 700 and something thousand business-related studies, anthropology, sociology in the 21st century, and you expect to get funding. So our whole curriculum, even from pre-primary, primary, secondary, CBC, 844, whatever you want to call it,
yes,
needs to be overhauled to become a 21st century education system that channels people to university that are trained on skills that are relevant for. We want to be manufacturing, but
yes,
we in the country right now, there are only like 307,000 engineers. Yeah, we want to have universal healthcare. We only have 28,000 doctors, 170,000 nurses. Why? Because we are churning out more ISPAC members, more LSK members, more Simbas in the media, honestly. So if we don't change the education model,
yes,
and if the government says universities are supposed, as much as you are public, you're supposed to make a profit, then universities now need to change to go to more of how do we get donor funding, and donor funding comes for research.
yes.
And that is one thing that is really lacking in the universities that we have in Kenya.
Reginald, before I cross over to Peter Amunga this morning, I mean, the elephant in the room is that we have been funding these universities on a higher level, fine, and the enrollment of students who are crossing over to these universities is now dwindling. Case in point, it's now mandatory that for anybody to cross over to a university in the country, you need to attain that grade, that minimum grade C plus and above. Reginald, back then, that was never a reason for you to go to university or not. In fact, universities were even able to take up students who would score below the minimum grade that is required for you to cross over to university. But this is how we had set the universities, Reginald, to take on these students, and there were many of them. At some point, we graduated even the polytechnics in the country to universities, and majority of us now were moving to the universities. Case in point, both 2013, 2014, we were saying now you need to have a C plus to go to university. So where is all this infrastructure the universities have built to take up the students going to? Is that not what we should have first of all solved?
Simba, to also look at it so that we are accurate.
Yes.
Back then, you had 3-4 universities.
Yes.
Now you have 10-12. So if UN expects to have the same enrollment as they had back then they're just fooling themselves.
Yes.
So if they base all their financials based on the enrollment they had 5-6 years ago in terms of percentage, that is changing because people now have different options. I don't have to go to University of Nairobi to do medicine. I can go to KU to do medicine. I can go to African Nazarene to do medicine. You know, I can go to Strathmore to do a good business degree. I don't have to go to University of Nairobi School of Business. I can go to Daystar to do journalism. You know, so certain universities are now specializing. I think Daystar specializes especially in producing very good media journalists and stuff like that. So anyone wants to do media and journalism knows I need to get into Daystar. They will not even consider JKUAT, they will not consider UAN and all that stuff.
Yes.
So that's a wake-up call for universities to know that you can't be a jack of all trades. You need to start now specializing. What are we going to be producing? And be known that we are producing that.
Yes.
So as long as we are getting our students, where you can even now look for A students, if you want to be known as the university that produces the best economic thoughts, economic students, economic research, then you tailor yourself towards that and don't try to do offer degrees in anthropology, English, sociology, offer business related, and you become a business related university and you can attract funding. you can get partnerships with organizations so that even your students have places to go work and they have a premium when they come out. People say, if a business student comes out from Strathmore, that is a student that you want to get, because they've concentrated on that. I know Strathmore is trying to do law now. I'm thinking now they're beginning to miss the point, because they're trying to spread themselves too thinly. Then you cannot afford to be able to do it. Then Simba also, if you look at the crossover rate from primary to secondary, like currently right now we have about 10.4 million people in secondary school. Our universities have no capacity to get these people into university when they graduate gradually, obviously, when they finish. So you notice that from number of people in primary, we always lose close to 40-50% when they go to secondary. From secondary, we always lose another 40-50% to TVETs and university. And that's a problem now which the country needs to find out. Why are people dropping out between primary to secondary? And why are people dropping out between secondary and university?
Yes.
Which is a problem that should to be sorted. And I like more people going to technical university. Because a plumber who's trained with the proper skills will actually make, at the end of the day, more money than a degree holder. And they can easily become an entrepreneur, start their own business faster than even a degree holder. So instead of looking at it from just universities, we should look at it, how do we strengthen then polytechnics and TVETs, so that for those who really don't want to go to university and want to get hands-on life skills, have a place to, and we can them. Than where we have 10 million in secondary and you end up with only 400,000 in university after 20 years, and you're wondering, okay, so what happened to the other 9 million? Yeah, they got lost somewhere. So universities need to start specializing. Gone are the days where university can offer every degree and still produce the great people that are there. I think Daystar has discovered that, Strathmore has discovered that, as though they are beginning to lose the thing there. We don't know what USIU does, but yes, but they also need to just figure out what their strengths are.
Yes.
JKUAT's strengths initially was technology, research on technology and stuff like that. And you know, if someone wants to do an architectural degree, engineering degree, first choice is, I need to go to JKUAT, you know. But you cannot just be a campus that gives everything and expect to, one, attract funding, and two, also be able to be lean. Yeah, to be able to live within your means. If you are public, to live within what the government is able to give you in terms of allocation from the budget. But it has to be supplemented by research funding, grant funding for specific programs. So our dons, our vice chancellors, the Senate for universities need to start thinking outside the box. I think instead of MPs and MCAs going for benchmarking, these guys need to go for how other universities are surviving during this period.
Pretty much. Let me bring in a Peter Amunga now. Peter Amunga, I mean, if you look at that Auditor General's report, they're saying that one of the reasons as why most public universities are finding themselves here, number one, is because of mismanagement. Number two, the dwindling university enrollment. I mean, Peter Amunga, yes, Reginald has the solutions, and that's exactly what the Ministry of Education had told them some time back, that they need to be more creative in finding this money that is supposed to run these institutions. But Peter Amunga, in the short term, Kenyatta University has gone into, as of June 2020, they have liabilities up to 6.38 billion Kenyan shillings. What has to be done in the short term? All right, we seem to not be having Peter Amunga with us. We shall be getting back to him when we get him, we shall be getting back to that question. Reginald, let me put the same question to you now. I mean, the Auditor General is saying liabilities for Kenyatta University as of now, year ended June 2020, it is a 6.38 billion shillings. Reginald, in the short term, because that's a university that is taking short-term loans to sustain itself, what has to be done then in the short term?
One, they need to get a proper finance person to help them sort out their finances, not a don, not a whatever.
Yes.
And you're offering business degrees with lecturers with PhDs. Honestly, tap into your skill set of your professors and say, guys, this is the situation. How do we restructure this balance sheet of ours? Because it's literally balance sheet restructuring.
Yes.
As an initial step. to stop the bleeding. Yeah.
Yes.
Balance, restructure your balance sheet, but then also have the long-term plans that we've just discussed. So if you have liabilities, maybe which are all falling due within 90, whatever, are you able to restructure a better payment plan to spread them out? Or have you reached a point where you have to say, okay, guys, we are not able to pay this 3 billion, that's the truth of the matter, but we are going to be generating this amount of revenue, as you have a proper plan going forward. Can this 3 billion be turned into equity in the university or something of that nature? Or if the government comes and says, okay, we will pay that 6.3, but you have to have a plan of how you are going to make sure that you're not going to end up in the same mess going forward. So it needs proper restructuring that needs to be done, a balanced restructuring. And they have the that, I hope, but they should have the professors that have this to do that on a short term.
Yes.
But then if you restructure and you don't change and everything remains as business as usual, you will find yourself in the same spot. Look at Uchumi. Fix the problem, you go back, jump in the same pool. So which doesn't make sense. So it's fix the problem, but in a long-term plan of what happens after we fix the problem to ensure that we are no longer back in that problem.
Pretty much. All right, Ron, do you want to take a short break or we move to the next one this morning? All right, now government employees might soon be rewarded with bonuses for good performance if the Public Service Commission, that is the PSC, Performance Management Regulations 2021, see the light of day. Policy analysts now say this as the way in for the government to formulate an awarding scheme or an awards scheme targeting employees who exhibit ethical practices and also come up with innovations that lead to improved public service delivery. Low productivity in the civil service has already been blamed on a weak performance management in the performance of the public sector, which will now require state agencies to set up performance contracting committees to set targets, monitor and evaluate employee performance, comprising of 2 commissioners appointed by the PSC chairperson, a representative of the line ministry, a person from the treasury, and 2 other people from selected public bodies. Remunerations of state employees as a total of government expenditure has almost doubled from 14.3% in the 2013-2014 financial year to 25% in 2017-2018, partly due to wage rises from collective bargaining agreements. Good. That point is to look at exactly how the state remunerates its employees. Let's jump into that data that we have for you this morning. And if you look at the wage employment in the public sector, that is one thing that the government has failed to bring down all the way from 2015 to 2019. Has always been on the rise. Now let's cross over to the next part as well. Wage payments in the public sector as well, same thing as well, which is essentially the same thing that we've seen, that when you have a rise in the number of the employees in the public sector, you would have also a rise in the wage payments in the public sector. Annual percentage change in public sector wage employment, you will see that under that 2018 was the least one that we had at 1.18% in terms of that change, but all the way to 2019 where we had a 2.65% change. But the only thing to point out around that area is that it has always been on a positive change, never coming down. All right, annual percentage change in public wage payments as well, you will see that all the way from 2016 to 2019 always been on a positive, with 2019 recording the highest at 10.8%. Good. Composition of public wage employment in 2019, you will see that the biggest one is Teacher Service Commission, which takes 38%, ministries and other budgetary institutions taking 24%. We do have 11% taken by parastatal bodies, with the others taking just 5%, and 22% which is taken by county governments. So the biggest ones are the county governments. We do have Teacher Service Commission and ministries and other budgetary institutions taking more than 20% of that. As we wait for Peter Amunga's a signal to sort of normalize, let's cross over to Reginald. Reginald, is that the best way to go for a government Oh, yes, we have Peter Munga. Peter Munga, is this the best way to
Yes.
go? You offer bonuses to government employees who are performing properly, and this is the same government that is saying we need to reduce the wage bill in the country. Is that the best way to go?
Yes,
Can we think of
yes,
better
yes.
alternatives?
Simba, allow me to say something before my internet is a problem. Yes, you know what we need as a country, our wage bill, what we have seen at the universities, what you've just been talking about, Kenyatta University, that is the same problem. That's the line of problem. We recruited so many teachers, we recruited so many university lecturers, yet we are not planned for it.
Yeah.
So the wage bill is high everywhere, not just in, you have seen Teacher Service Commission is the leading. Now, the problem is this. It all goes back to management. And the labor sector in this country has been mismanaged by the government and by the employers themselves. Universities overemployed. Schools, we have seen, the problem in many of our schools is, you go to a place like, say, Nairobi. Nairobi has got more teachers than say a place like in Turkana. Why? Somebody is overemploying within Nairobi schools and not employing in other places. There is a lot of labor mismanagement in the country. And this goes back to corruption, whereby people are buying jobs. It also goes back to paying or rewarding political cronies or people who voted for you. Now the problem we have had in this country starts with the politics, the bad politics. President Moi said, siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. When we have bad politics, we have bad policies that come up, and that is where we are having our problem. Simba, just to say something about this, right now we cannot start doing what we're saying, cutting down labor or cutting or reducing the workforce. It's an election year. We have entered an election year, and our politics control everything. There is no way you can tell this government to reduce the wage bill, reduce the number of workers at such a time. So what's going to happen is that we will continue to see this undisformed. Simba, did you hear me?
Yes, I got you right there. You broke towards the end, but it's good. Reginald, let me also get your sentiment on that. And the thing that poor performance management in the public sector is the one to blame for the way in which the performance in this sector is always questionable. In fact, some proposals have been from Raila Amolo Odinga is that let's have everybody in the public sector serve some time in the private sector before they cross over to the public sector as well. Now, under this proposal, they're saying that under the poor performance management, the only thing they're going to do to make sure that the public service sector ticks is to award top performing employees with bonuses. Reginald, this coming a day after KRA officials are going to be awarded with an equivalent of a 1 month salary for surpassing their targets for the financial year 2019-2020. Is this the way to go to make sure that things in the public service sector tick?
I don't know whether you'll trust the public sector with bonus scheme. If we can't even ask them to pay trips or fuel allowance, not the whole bonus scheme. I think, again, in this 21st century, whoever wants to reform the public sector and service, one is to look at technology.
Yes.
Yeah? How do we digitize most of that we do not have of people that we are doing a job that can be done by one system, so to speak. There are certain things that you really have to go to an office to, and you can actually do it. And if you look at countries like Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, especially Finland, how they've managed to automate most of government to ensure that one government remains clean, so to speak, as one way of being it, as a long-term um, and secondly, I don't think that the problem just starts at the civil sense. It starts also from the top, where we don't hold people accountable.
Yes.
For example, our MPs, the job of an MP, the job of an MP is to legislate. Yeah, but when it comes to voting for an MP, people are busy looking at, did he build a road, did he build a toilet, did he build a classroom, instead of looking at how many laws did he pass that benefit me in terms of either protecting my security, protecting my health, or protecting income, or increasing my my income. So when you then set up certain departments, the question is, what is the agenda or the goal for this department? Yeah, how best can that goal and agenda be achieved? Does it need 100 people to achieve it? Or can it be achieved by 20, 30 people? If it can be achieved by 20, 30 people, we take. Yeah, because the problem that so many civil servants is the government trying to create employment by hiring people instead of growing the sector so that people are following elsewhere. Thirdly, Simba, until the day we get people who come to public service for exactly that, serving the public,
Yes.
we will always be able to get performance to be done, because we're getting people who are coming to look for money, pens, procurement, tenders, get connections and money and stuff like that. And that's why you have someone who enters public service and they're there for 30 years in the same position, same role, no improvement, no increase in the education, no. I know the government tried that if you get a master's, your salary goes up, if you get a PhD, and that was a way of trying to get them to go back to school and improve their skills. But when you make it that a person who goes for public service really actually wants to serve the public, you go to parliament but really want to serve the public, to make money, make, so that you allow or start attracting people who genuinely have a heart to that. I have a heart for public service. You should not be able to go rich working as a public servant. But here in Kenya, you can only go rich by being in a public, either an MP, for parastatal, procurement manager, and stuff like that. And until that changes, for you to be public, you cannot be buying Lexuses and Land Cruisers and you're a public service.
Yes.
That is someone who is gone for money and is not for public service. So the government needs to stop being the source of hiring and create an environment where private sector grows and consumes those people, so that they don't put pressure on themselves to say, hey, let's employ 300,000 teachers, so that they can come next year and say, we created 300,000 jobs. No, you just hired them. You didn't create the jobs, you hired them yourselves. Yeah, let people go to areas where they are productive, because we have a lot of labor, a lot of brains in civil service, which is not different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, Peter Munga,
Yes.
now let's look at this proposal as well. They're saying that each public office then would have a commission of 2 identified or appointed by PSC. We're going to look in the targets that have been set by that specific office or by that specific state department, and then analyze and see whether they've met it or not. That's one of their roles now. Number 2, to also offer proposals on, number 1, demotion, number 2, disciplinary action, and number 3, transfer of the state officials who for one reason or another have failed to produce the results that are needed in the state specific offices. I mean, Peter Munga, don't we have managers who are supposed to do this that the PSC is now proposing?
That is true. We have the people. We have the people who can do all that kind of work. Hello, are you getting me?
Yes, I'm getting
Yes,
you, Peter.
hello?
Munga.
Yes, so we have the people who can do that kind of work. We have managers, we have directors, we have board members who should do all these things. I want to give just a simple story to you, our listeners, a very short one. It says, there's a time we want to dig a hole because they didn't trust him. They hired for him a watchman to see him dig the hole. They hired for him a supervisor. They hired for him an accountant to see that the soil that is coming from the, So we have so many people being hired to do the same job. Now, what we can do, country, we need to stop this kind of thing. We need to be saying, if you have been employed, like Reginald is saying, if you have been employed to do the work, do your work. We have managers. we have county directors, we have all these kind of people. They can do what this PSC, Public Service Commission, is directing us to do. Now, as Reginald says, technology is the best way.
Yes.
I have worked in a school as a teacher, whereby instead of somebody supervising what time I come in, we were given a bio what? So that when you come in, you're able to press in, you log in that you already have arrived at your place of job. You don't need a supervisor to see what time you came in and what time you left job. Technology can solve all these things. We can solve your entries, your exits, your books of accounts, and your effectiveness as a teacher, as a person working for the government. All this can be done using technology. We only need to embrace technology.
Pretty much. Reginald, let's clear this conversation this morning like this then. I mean, the same government is the one that wants to control the wage bill, bring it in control. Fine. And the same government is the one that is saying, well, give them bonuses. Are we speaking from two ends of the mouth? Are we trying to solve a problem by making it worse, Reginald?
Simba, wage bill is not even that high.
Is it Reginald? Is it not?
If you look at percentage to budget,
yes,
our wage bill is actually below 20-something%.
Yes.
The problem is debt. Sort out debt, you reach 40% fund. You don't have to fire anyone. You have to make them effective, productive, definitely, and obviously the air in line, we are overstaffed. Yeah, we are overstaffed. But if you look at the wage bill in contrast to the total budget, the wage bill is actually not more than 22% of the whole budget. But look at debt in context to the whole budget, it's close to 40 to 60% of the whole budget.
Yes.
So which one is your problem between wage and debt?
Problem.
So we'll spend time trying to say, what do they call it? Tighten your belt, or don't increase salaries for whatever. But I'm thinking, but you are dealing with what is not your problem. Your problem is that
yes,
every 1 shilling that, or 100 shillings that you collect in 60 cents is going to pay debt. It's not going to pay salary. 60 cents
yes,
is debt. So we will spend to say, how do we cut the wage bill? How do we contain it? But if we don't sort out the debt, you can even bring that wage deal down to 10% of the budget, but your problem will still be that you're still spending more than what you achieve because of debt. So I'm not really worried by them offering bonuses. Yeah, if it has worked in the private sector, well and good. We know that the only problem that will it work also in the public sector is a question you should be asking, which I doubt it will work in the public sector. It's just 1 month. This guy can make 1 month salary by just going to a conference in Mombasa for 3 days. So the question is, you need to use a motivator which is not a motivator at the end of the day, because they have other ways of doing it. Why do you think MPs, MCAs go for benchmarking? They are going for the per diem. Ask any person who works in government, any person who works in civil servant, whenever there's a training, they will all go. Even if you want to give them training, them will give you training in your offices. They'll tell you, no, book us in Naivasha. Yeah, but you're in Mombasa. See, we can just have it in Mombasa. No, the guys have to leave Mombasa to come to Naivasha.
Yes.
The reason they love Mombasa is the amount of money they are getting. Yeah.
Yes.
So then you need to figure out, how do we motivate this guy? One bonus is neither here, especially for KRA. Honestly, those guys make money from the means that I cannot do here for the love of my life. That means one month salary. I'm not going to motivate him. He most probably makes 5 times, 6 times his annual salary, is what he gets from other areas, than the 1 month bonus they are trying to whatever. So, as the government needs to think, yes, bonus works for private sector.
Yes.
Because the only thing that I have is that salary, that I have 15 months salary, I am happy, you know. But will it have the same impact in the public sector? I highly doubt.
Pretty much. Right. Peter Munga, clear this conversation this morning because we only have 2 minutes to step out. They're saying that, well, these 2 officials that are going to stay in these offices are going to sort of give you information on how to, number one, whether retain this employee who's not performing or meeting their targets in this office, and also offer advisory on transfers. Peter Munga, when you transfer a teacher from one school to another school, does that mean that they are actually going to perform in that other school?
No, it is something like a punishment. If you localize a teacher from, say, from his home to another place, more of it's a punishment. In fact, you'll have demotivated the person further. The irony of it is this: we have wrong policies. We've got it wrong, very wrong. I love how Reginald puts it. We in the public sector cannot work the same way with the private. Our policies, we got it wrong, and our economy is not doing well. I think these are just gimmicks to try and resuscitate, a dying economy. I tend to think this is coming in with what we call structural adjustment programs.
Yes.
They want to cut people's jobs and all that kind of thing. We should expect more of this. The World Bank and the IMF is going to come in to the back door. They're going to tell the Ministry of Labor, they're going to tell the PST that you want us to continue lending you money, you must cut the size of your labor force. So some of these gimmicks we are seeing, these are just ways to introduce cutting away of jobs from people. It is a way to sack people to reduce the labor. And this is the World Bank. It is speaking through the PSC behind the doors, behind curtains. What I want to say is this: expect more of this. But as Reginald says, it is not supposed to help anybody to work, not anyone. It is supposed to help us pay the debt. So we are only doing this because we are in debt and because we got it wrong, so we are trying to correct it. That's all.
Pretty much. At this point, I would like to say thank you very much for Reginald and Peter Munga for joining us this morning on our economic review. You can take them live to the time that they came back, that they joined us in the studio here this morning at Metropole TV on YouTube. And you can also talk to us at Metropole TV KE across all your social media platforms. We come to the end of our show this morning. Thank you very much for being a part of it.